Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
I now call to order the joint meeting of the City Council and the Minnehaha County Commissioners of Tuesday, August 27th, 2019. I note that there's a quorum for the Minnehaha County Commission.
On behalf of the city, I'd ask the clerk to take roll.
Councilmember Sale.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Staley. Here. Brecky. Erickson. Here. Kylie.
Here.
Neitzert.
Here.
Selberg.
Here. A quorum is present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask for a motion on the Minnehaha County side to approve the regular agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Ask for a motion on behalf of the city to approve the agenda.
So moved, Erickson.
Second, Kylie?
Take a roll.
Councilmember Sale.
Yes.
Starr. Yes. Staley.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Neitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes. The agenda is approved.
That takes us to agenda item 1. It's a reading to consider vacating a portion of right-of-way located on South Overland Pass. Kevin Hookman, good evening.
Good evening, Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. This item for the vacation of South Overland Pass was advertised by Minnehaha County for the second reading to be held today, August 27th. This was not advertised by the city. In kind of the working of the county and the state's attorney and the city, staff found out to try to move this forward, staff found out that the county should have not taken this application in the first place, as South Dakota Codified Law number 3118.3 states that a board of supervisors may not vacate or change any portion of the county highway system, nor may a board of county commissioners vacate or change any portion of the township road system. Staff has directed the petitioner to go to the township from this point on to vacate this portion of the road since it's owned and operated by the township. So since this was advertised, though, it had to stay on the agenda, and it's a public hearing, so we'll have to take comment or any testimony. Staff notices that the county will have to take action to withdraw the petition from the county process. So, is there any questions?
Any questions for Kevin?
I've got a question.
Councilman?
Kevin, what is that body of water there?
It's some sort of a reservoir. Yeah, that the development made up.
Man-made?
Yes.
Because it looks like there's some kind of a creek running into it there.
Yeah, there's a creek running into there, and there's a dam that's holding back the reservoir. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, did you want a motion to remove this from the county side?
Well, this is a hearing, so I think I'll ask first to see if there's anyone here that would like to speak on this matter. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on this motion to withdraw? Seeing no one rushing to the podium, I would take a motion.
A motion to remove this from the county agenda?
Second.
Motion and a second to withdraw this item. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I think I need to do a roll call vote, actually, Olivia. Thank you.
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Yes.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So that item has been withdrawn. That takes us to agenda item 2. And this is a joint budget hearing for the Siouxland Heritage Museums. Bill, good evening.
technology. Good afternoon. Bill Hoskins, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. The Siouxland The Siouxland Heritage Museums is dedicated to the experience of learning for our community, its families and visitors through the collection, preservation, and interpretation of history. We currently are operating 3 buildings, the Old Courthouse Museum and the Pettigrew Home Museum. Both are 130 years old. Both are on the National Register of Historic Places and are open to the public daily. And last year, we opened the Irene Hall Museum Resource Center, which is open to the public Tuesday through Friday, 1 to 5, and by appointment. Visitation for the Siouxland Heritage Museums last year was approximately 77,000. We were open to the public Saturday, daily. Our busiest days of the week were Sunday, Friday, and Thursday. Busiest months, May, March, August, July. And we had visitors last year from all 50 states and 29 foreign countries. Our staff manages over 112,000 cataloged items. They range in size greatly from the Faywick Flyer, which is the size of a pickup truck, to things smaller than a dime. We have about 3,000 objects per year that are on exhibition. Currently, about 10,000 that are in a searchable online database. Probably the biggest thing collections did last year is moving the museum's collection. And last year in 2018, we moved about 90,000 objects from the Old Courthouse in Pettigrew to the Museum Resource Center. That project is ongoing, has slowed down quite a bit, but we continue to relocate artifacts. Our staff also presented over 600 programs last year to over 45,000 people. We did an additional 1,200 guided tours through the Pettigrew home. We serve 54 K-12 schools in 24 school districts, including every school in Minnehaha County. About 68% of our off-site programming was in the city of Sioux Falls, about 12% in Minnehaha County outside of Sioux Falls, 8% in Lincoln County, and the rest outside the region. Demand for programming has increased about tenfold since the year 2000. Some of our top programs on site, the Plaza Concert Series, Star Lab Kids Activity Day. Off-site programs, the top ones are the Civil War Soldier, Teepee, Star Lab, Pioneer Experience, and Then and Now. We have 6 exhibition spaces at the Old Courthouse Museum, 2 really at the Pettigrew, 1 on first floor, 1 on second floor. We work towards opening a new exhibition every quarter, 4 per year, and those exhibits are usually up for 18 to 24 months. Our average cost per square foot for exhibitions is about $65. In 2018, we had 77 rentals at the Old Courthouse Museum. For about 4,700 people attended those. Most were weddings or weddings receptions. All rental expenses and revenues accounted for in the Museum Enterprise Fund, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Our volunteers are really priceless. We couldn't operate without them. Last year we had 101 people volunteer their time, about 4,300 hours. We recognize our volunteers in an annual volunteer banquet during Volunteer Week in April. I think you're all getting invites to that every year. The program's coordinated on a part-time basis by one of our full-time staff, Jesse Nissom, our events coordinator. Getting to why we're here, The Siouxland Heritage Museums were created in a joint cooperative agreement between the city and the county in 1974. We have an 11-member board, 5 people appointed by the city, 5 appointed by the county. The 11th is the president of the Siouxland Heritage Museums Alliance, a 501c3 private nonprofit friends group. Article 4 of that joint cooperative agreement requires that the museum board prepare and recommend an annual budget to the city council and county commission. That's what I'm here to do. Our budget really is 6 parts. 4 parts that are tax-based, 2 parts that are revenue-based. The biggest piece of that is the museum's operations budget, which is about 77% of the whole, of all those pieces put together. If you look at our comparison 2019 budget to our 2020 request, there is an increase of about $120,000. That increase, when it really comes down to it, is in human resources. There's a 3% cost of living increase, that's probably not the right term, a 3% increase in the pay matrix for the county, and an anticipated 15% increase in health insurance. Each of those pieces has a little bit different rules or things. The operations budget is one that is contributed 50-50 by the city and county. It's something that needs to be adopted in the joint budget hearing. It is administered by the county. There's a reconciliation at the end of the year for any joint budgets of what's spent or not spent. In 2020, we're asking for an operations budget of $1,254,333. 94% of that budget is for human resources. Operational expenses, which have been declining as a percent, I've been moving to the enterprise fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have 3 maintenance budgets. The Pettigrew Home and Museum maintenance budget is for the Pettigrew, which is owned by the city of Sioux Falls. The city provides for that annual maintenance budget. It's adopted by the city council and is administered by the county. That's a change that happened about 10 years ago. It was deemed easier to do it that way, I guess. Our request for 2020 is $35,100 for the Pettigrew. And that money is really being used for professional services, which boils down to the elevator maintenance guy, the fire and sprinkler inspection, the fire extinguishers people. We have repairs that are ongoing. Really, the big challenge there is it's a 130-year-old building, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But I think, on the whole, we're doing well with that building. Utilities make up another big chunk of the maintenance budgets and supplies, and we have a small amount each year for replacing alarm pieces, motion detectors, smoke detectors, and so on that go out. The old courthouse maintenance budget is very similar to the Pettigrew in setup. It is for the old courthouse museum, which is owned by Minnehaha County. The county is providing all the resources for the maintenance of that building, and it's administered by the county. And in 2020, we're asking for $57,000, basically the same amount as we did in 2019. And that's set up very similar. Instead of professional services, it's called contracts. I don't know why exactly, but it's the same type of thing. The maintenance of the fire, the elevator, the fire sprinklers, and so on. The third maintenance budget is for the Museum Resource Center, and this is one that we, in mutual agreement, agreed to the city and county to pay 50-50. This is one that's evolving. Basically the same types of categories as we have in the Pettigrew and Old Courthouse maintenance budget. We opened that building last year, and our original intent, it opened in the end of the year. We didn't have, I think, 4 months of operation, and we were opening doors and all kinds of things. 2019, well, as we're tracking through the year, we think we underestimated in some of the utility costs. And so working with Kim Adamson in particular in the auditor's office, I'm guessing that $45,000 for that maintenance budget will be. About 78% of the cost of that building right now is the utilities. We have 2 revenue budgets. One is the Museum Special Enterprise Fund, and this accounts for revenues and expenses associated with the provision of programs or rentals, programs, and services for which a fee is charged. And really, this is where a lot of our operational expenses have been moving to. We're asking for a budget of $216,364 in 2020. Really, that is you authorizing expenditure up to that point. It's up my job to find the revenue to be able to spend that amount of money. It's getting spent for education, our programming, our exhibits program, collection supplies and materials, marketing, rentals, human resources. The enterprise fund pays for our summer interns. It pays for 1/3 of the cost of the exhibits assistant and the events coordinator position. And the ubiquitous other is taxes we have to pay on some of those services for which we charge a fee. Staff training is all in the enterprise fund, not in the operations budget anymore. Our final budget is the museum store budget, and this accounts for revenues and expenses associated with the operation of the museum store. We're asking for $21,500. That is really a spending limit that's kind of plucked out of the air, and that's just what we're spending on buying stock for the store. We have been making enough money, and over the last few years, I've mentioned this, and that is to allow a transfer at the end of the year of $10,000 or the beginning of the next year from the enterprise or from the store fund and transfer it to the enterprise fund to support educational programming. And we would like to continue to do that. Significant changes in the budget this year, really in operations. There's an increase in the pay matrix, an increase in the cost of healthcare, and another increase is change is the cost of our network connection. It's listed under telephone. The network connections between the county matrix and the Pettigrew and the county computer system and the Museum Resource Center are more than were anticipated as well, and that's rolled into the enterprise fund. At the Irene Hall, primarily the biggest change is the utilities. A quick summary of the budget. We're asking for a total budget of $1,625,586. And that basically breaks down into city support of $685,042. That represents the city's 50% of the operations budget, the city's 50% of the Museum Resource Center budget, and the Pettigrew maintenance budget. The county support, we're asking for $706,942. That represents the county's half of the operations budget, the county's half of the Museum Resource Center maintenance budget, and the Old Courthouse Museum. And finally, our revenue support budget of $235,828. would like to thank you for your continued support, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
First, I would ask the audience if the audience have any questions or comments on that budget. If not, I'd ask the joint members. Are there any folks up here that have any questions? Councilman Seeley?
Bill, I just have one question. How does it feel now to be past the season of change order? Because we saw a lot of you in the change order season.
I'm really happy to be past change orders. It is a season, it's been a real change for the museum and its operation. Our staff size has not increased. We've added a third site that's taken a little rebalancing of our resources. Also moving around, and a lot of things are shuffling at the old courthouse museum, for instance. We expanded one of our exhibit galleries that was an office. We moved that to another area. And if you come and see the new exhibit on motorcycles, you'll get to see that change.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Barth?
Bill, you're expecting a larger museum convention to be coming to Sioux Falls. Is that next year? And what is entailed in that?
Yeah. Sioux Falls has been selected for the site of the Mountain Plains Museum Association's annual meeting, September 2nd through 5th of 2020. And the museum staff, as well as a lot of other museums in the region, are part of the planning for that very large museum professional conference here.
Other questions? If not, I'd look for a motion on the county side to approve the budget.
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Hiberger.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Ask the city for a motion to approve.
To approve?
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Sale? Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
That is passed.
All right, so that item passed. That takes us to agenda item 3, which is a joint budget hearing for Siouxland Libraries. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, nearly evening. Just gonna do this. There we go, and I have to do this. Hi, Jody Fick, Director of Siouxland Libraries. Very pleased to be here for our annual request for budgeting our libraries. I want to start with a big thank you to the finance team for helping us put this budget together. This has been, well, I've been with Siouxland Library since 1995 and have played roles in putting the budget together for over 15 years. And this has been one of the most, I guess I would say, interesting years in a good way, in that on the city side, we actually have a lot more knowledge of all of the budgets of the entire system. And I would say that Siouxland Libraries is very grateful to play a role in making services happen for our citizens. And I feel really good about the confidence that this finance team has done in leading us that direction. So thank you much to the finance team. I also want to recognize the Library Board of Trustees who give us a lot of guidance and advice in what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, and making sure that we're looking out for the rights of all of our citizens. And I'm pleased to say that nearly all of our library board is here. So I'm just going to have them stand real quickly, and so that we can see that they're here. So thank you very much, Library Board, for the work that you do in helping us make wise decisions. So without further ado, in the city's budget presentations, which includes Siouxland Libraries, we have been starting with a video that tells you a little bit more of what we're doing and gives you a chance to see outside of my face the impact that we're making. So, the public library serves a unique place in American society as one of the few places that anyone can use for free. We are accessible for all. Siouxland Libraries has served the citizens of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County since 1995. Each year, over 1.2 million people come into our 13 libraries in Bookmobile. In the age of smartphones and the internet, the library continues to thrive. Last year, people borrowed over 2.25 million items. For Sioux Falls, books are still king. That's what checks out the most, especially with people who are ages 15 to 35. But the demand for ebooks and downloadable audiobooks continues to explode. And that fastest growing market, the e-audio, is the area that the library struggles to have enough materials in. Siouxland Libraries also provides programs for people of all ages. Each week, there are over 50 different library programs that you can attend for free. And Siouxland Libraries doesn't just do things within the library, we also reach out into our communities. We have a bookmobile that goes to many of the schools and to the daycares. Any place that we have folks that can't come to us, we come to you. We also take our programs out to some of our senior centers. And we have programs where if you are housebound, you can connect with us and we'll bring programs to you. The library accomplishes all of this with dedicated, well-trained staff. In 2018, Siouxland Libraries switched our focus from customer service to hospitality. We want our citizens to have a great experience when they're at the library. To go, wow, they're thinking about my needs. In the next 3 years, the library has set a couple of major goals. One of these surrounds early literacy. In Sioux Falls, only 68% of the children who entered the school year last year were kindergarten ready. Siouxland Libraries has always been about children, and we are going all hands on deck to try to work with our family and community to better prepare our earliest learners. At the downtown library, we now have the We Play and Learn room, along with similar elements at most of our libraries. Our staff is going through intensive training right now on making sure that they incorporate early literacy elements into all of our programs. In serving our citizens, Siouxland Libraries often partners with different groups in the community. One of our more unique ones is at the Oakview branch. We have partnered with Feeding South Dakota with our Food for All program. What this is at the end of the school day, when we have around 100 children coming over from the local elementary school, we have a snack available that Feeding South Dakota provides. And children now, after they have their snack, frequently will be participating at a higher level in our library programs and are able to focus more directly on completing their schoolwork. The other major goal that the library has in the next years is to revamp the library website. Our website is going to go from just being a spot where you can come and connect to our resources to being a true digital library. It is going to be designed in a way that helps you get quickly to the resources that you need. You need a new job, you need help with doing that resume, we're going to have a spot on the website for you. Siouxland Libraries has always had very strong support in the community. I am very proud of the work that the staff does in making sure that the citizens have access to the resources that they want and get to the information that they need to have better lives. Siouxland Libraries, connecting you to a world of information and ideas to enrich your life. Thank you. A little bit more about the numbers of our story. This infographic gives you some of the details, but I wanted to talk about a couple of them specifically and some of the new programs that we're doing surrounding it. On the bottom part, it talks about that our 13 locations are open over 25,000 hours for service. Well, this year we added another program at our Hartford branch called Expanded Access. And basically, Expanded Access works by, with your library card, you can badge in when the staff isn't there. So we've been doing this program, so it's kind of like a 24/7 gym, but we don't quite do 24/7 because I don't think you quite need to be there at night, but because we do want to make sure that we have some security involved with it. How we're doing this is people register for it. When they get there, they badge in so we know who's coming in. We've placed security cameras in the library so we can keep track of what they're doing. We have self-checkout machines in the library so that they can check out their materials there just like they are already doing. They're able to use the computers. In the 4 months that we've been doing it, we have, and remember Hartford isn't a very big town, but we have 61 people registered and they're coming in about 5 to 6 times a day when we are not there. Primarily they use us from 8 to 10 in the morning, hours before most of our libraries are even open at all. So this is a trend that is happening that's really happening in Europe right now. There's well over 500 libraries in Europe that have been doing this. We're in the first dozen in the US to try out this program. And Hartford's our little pilot. Community is liking it. Our hope is to expand that to Crooks next year. The other thing on this infographic I want to talk about is the 184 children's learning tablets. This is in support of our early literacy BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal to improve the readiness of our children before they enter kindergarten in the area of reading. Well, I don't think that tablets are the best way for children to learn. It's another way for them to learn. So this March, we started checking out learning tablets that have very specific programs on them that teach early literacy skills. Those have been very well received by our customers. They've been used over 2,000 times already in that 5 months. And I was figuring, because they all have a 3-week checkout, ideally, if they were all checked out for 3 weeks at a time, that's only 1,500 checkouts. So these are actually performing at a better level than what we would expect. So those are a couple of the new things that are going on. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you is that on the staffing side of our library, we have been doing a little bit of reorganization and regrouping who is responsible for what. So you're going to see some changes as we try to be more efficient and more able to respond to our customers. I'm going to talk a little bit about our big, hairy, audacious goals, because without this budget, we can't even think to accomplish these. The first goal is to improve our early literacy skills of children from birth to age 5. 90% of a child's brain development actually happens in the first 18 months of life. All that before age 5. I don't know what that says for us who are on the above 50 age, but in that birth to age 5 is just that opportunity to connect with the kids. We have so far retrained all of our staff on how to approach their story times and how to incorporate early literacy in so that it's just happening naturally. We have formed an action team. We've met with a number of the groups in our community to try to take an inventory over what is already being done in this area in Sioux Falls and in Minnehaha County. And surprisingly, there is a lot less happening than I thought that there would be. So I think this is the right area for us to be in, and I think what we're going to work at next is just concentrating our efforts on one area to see that we can have success before we expand out too much. So I have high hopes for that goal. Our next big, hairy, audacious goal is transforming the website into a digital branch. So far, most of what's happened has been behind the scenes, so you're not going to see as much. For those of you who know websites, we are now on our own node, separate from the Sioux Falls site, which allows us to start making changes that don't impact every other city department. We've been working a little bit with just some of the superficial things, fonts and stuff like that, and making sure that we're completely accessible for multiple users. I've listed up on this screen for you some of the major databases that we have that really can add value to many of our users' lives, and many people don't know that they even exist. And part of that is on this website, they all sit behind that button that says research. We've had that called online databases. None of those really tell you what the depth of the information that you're wanting to get to. So we're trying to figure out how to pull that out and also bring it outside of our library card paywall so that it's a lot easier for customers to use it. So now for the actual dollar amounts. On the budget, I've done 2 slides here kind of breaking the budget out in 2 different ways just because you see different things when you look at something from different viewpoints. This is our overall operating budget. We have 2 main categories, personnel and then everything else. As you can see from this slide, the library runs on its people. The library operates, we have 63 full-time equivalent staff plus 9.5, full-time equivalent. We have 63 authorized positions, all full-time, and then we have part-time staff that equal the number of hours of about 9.5 other people. Does that make sense? Okay. The library in 2005 was staffed with 62 authorized positions. So from 2005 to the present, we have been able to accomplish everything that we're currently doing, including adding another branch with 1 additional position. How have we done it? We've done it with a lot with technology. So about 5-6 years ago, you authorized us purchasing our automated materials handling machines, the self-checkouts, putting in RFID tags. We did that, and that probably saved us between 7 and 8 full-time staff that we'd have needed without those machines. We also outsourced some of our operation, so when you get to our materials budget, some of the cost to buy a book, they're a little more expensive now because we pay a company to to catalog it and to process it, put the labels on it, make it ready for checking out. So that saved us 3 full-time people. Those folks now have shifted out into our programming. If you look back and see how many programs we were doing 10 years ago, we have grown dramatically. Almost all of our programming at that time was for kids, for the littlest kids. Now we're doing programming for all ages. The other operating, we'll talk about a little bit more in this next slide. So now this is, the next slide shows you the budget breakdown by our various programs, how I kind of lump our expenses together. The first one in operating is our collections. The collections is all of our electronic databases, magazines. The cost to get the items on the shelves are, well, I said the magazines. So all of that, and then like Hoopla, I don't know if you're familiar with Hoopla, but our online ebooks and e-audio and our online movies and TV shows, that's all included in the collections. This is one area where it doesn't show up that there's change, but we do have a little bit of growth in there so that we can do a few more databases for that website. And to also be able to support the increased demand for the digital. And then in operations, that's where our personnel are at. So that increase there is all staffing. It's all staffing for the cost of living increases and then any merit increases for staff. Over 2/3 of the staff have been hired of our full-time staff have been hired in the last 5 years. So we have a lot of people at that beginning where they're getting more increases, where at the end, most of the people who had topped out have passed on. So it does mean that we have a little more costs there. Technology doesn't show up as any change there, but there is a slight decrease when you go to the actual budget page on page 54. That's because we keep track of our public computer use, and the use of the public computers has been decreasing as more people have their own devices. So we have decreased the number of actual physical computers that are in our libraries to reflect demand. And then facilities has a small increase in it because we need to put new carpet in that Oakview branch, and we also need to fix and actually do some replacements on some of the dividers in our meeting room walls. Next, I'm going to talk about the capital budget. And you see our dollar amounts for the next 5 years, because you do that approval for the next year for what we spend, plus then have knowledge of where we're headed. In this next year, the majority of our capital goes to buying our physical items, the books, the movies, the audiobooks. This year has a little bit of an increase in it because of our growing population is causing us to need more print, which is a good thing to have. We're also planning to add another self-checkout, and that would go to the Crooks branch so that we'd be able to do that expanded access at that branch. We have a small bit of shelving that we're adding. Most of that is actually going to go on the new bookmobile that is on order and will arrive soon next year. And then we need to replace our courier van. Just going to look ahead 1 year to 2021. You're going to see a huge increase there. 2021 is when we need to replace all those automated materials handling and self-checks for the rest of the system. So that you'll see a big pop-up there. So my final, this is our entire budget request. We are requesting $8.8 million. $7.6 million of that comes from the city of Sioux Falls. 1.2 this year will come from the county. How our funding works with the county is that there is actually a separate property tax mill levy that is dedicated just to library services. So that will fit within the anticipated collection amount that we'd be receiving. Any questions?
I think we'll start with the audience first. Is there anyone in the audience that has any questions about this budget presentation? All right. What about the members? Are there any of the joint members that Councilwoman Staley?
Jody, first of all, let me say that I so love how you talk about hospitality. You're talking about loving these kids, reaching out for customer service. Thank you for doing that. And this free service that we offer all of our people, wonderful. I want to ask you about, this is a growing trend, I think, within some schools, and I took a class at Northern this summer on elementary music curriculum. They were talking about, getting rid of the actual physical books and going with a whiteboard, these programs you can buy. That's concerning to me. I like to see a book. I think there's something about holding a book that will, I hope, never loses its value. What are you seeing, or what's your feeling about that within a library setting?
Well, I think there's a place for both the electronic and the print. There is a definite trend in our young people, those people from ages 16 to 25, where they're going back to the book. If they're going to read it, they don't want to read it on a screen because they're already on their screen so much. And they are actually using libraries at a higher percentage than most of the rest of our population. So I have, that gives me encouragement. Schools have a struggle in just like all of us, in making their dollars stretch. And so sometimes the electronic book is easier for them in that they don't wear out at the same rates. If they have multiple sites, they can get them there. I don't know all the reasons for why they're doing it. I know that our school libraries in South Dakota in general are suffering, so that's in terms of being adequately staffed. Many of them now are staffed with educational aides instead of actual trained librarians, especially when you get to your junior high, middle school and high school level. The requirement for education in school librarians is more at the elementary. So it is probably a lot easier to select for an entire system if you're selecting electronic versus paper. So it is discouraging that our schools aren't able to have as many print books as they should have. Literacy and that desire to read with kids is directly related to them being able to have books in their hands. So we need to continue working on that. And that's part of this next bookmobile is actually a little bit bigger than our last one because we have such demand from both the preschool through all the elementary for bookmobile stops that we need to be able to figure out how to get more kids on at once to get their selections on, so we're a little bit bigger, so we can get done with each stop and on to the next one.
Thank you.
Councilman Neitzer?
I do have a comment. I would say I live both quite a bit, the hard book and the electronic, and it's interesting. I think there's a place for both. My daughter loves the physical book. She does not like reading on devices, and that's great for whatever reason. Maybe it's because she does use devices so many, but there's something about holding that book she really likes. And then in my case, I'm getting older, my eyes don't work as well as they did. So I love having the ebook, especially at night, because then I can increase the font because things start to get blurry after about 8 o'clock. So.
And I do have to pitch in for my preferred format, which is the audiobook, especially the e-audiobook, because I can load it on my phone, I can listen through my car and stuff. But for us, so far, I just did a quick look to see how are our digital formats going before I came. Digital magazine use is up 76% this year. So people are finding that collection and really liking it. Digital audio is up 22%.
Yeah.
Digital ebook is up 5%.
And I also enjoy the audiobook at times, whether it be, if you're riding your bike or riding in your car, and obviously it's not practical to hopefully be reading while you're doing that. So that works well. The other comment that I wanted to make was, I just wanted to reflect how amazing it is that in a decade, you've literally grown really one employee. And and to only have 63 employees, is that what you said?
Yeah,
you got a pretty
63
good
full-time equivalent. The other thing that we did about 3 years ago is we flattened our organization a little bit. And because we had those automated material handling and the self-checks, we didn't need the clerk level position anymore. So to work at the library, you actually have to have a college degree. And so the type of work that we have is a lot of head work. And that makes us be able to operate more efficiently because the training that many of these folks have had goes right in line with what the library needs.
Sure. And I do have another comment on that, but the other thing I wanted to mention was, I've got Kindle and Nook on my phone, which is fine, and I've also got the actual Kindle devices and things, and I found that the only problem with the phones and stuff like that is there's so many distractions, and there's so many other temptations, and so you can end up sliding over it, so you have to be very diligent. So sometimes just a dedicated device where you don't really have a choice but to stick to it, but there's a place for all of them. But that is really amazing that you've been able to do that and keep really that many employees. That's not a whole lot of employees for the size of your system, and then you've been able to shift them over to important programming and work to what your mission. I mean, there's a place for some of the, I would call, more clerical work, such as scanning books in and things like that. But if you can figure out how to automate that, which you have, you can now use those same FTEs to be engaging with the children and developing people. So that's really great. So just kudos.
Thank you.
Commissioner Heiberger? Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any other comments? Questions?
Yes.
Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Fick, I guess my concern is the same as I probably end up having every year. Martin Luther King Jr. Day and the partnership that we also have with the school districts of being open the same days that they are. What would it take to be open? I mean, I checked this last year. It was literally 12 degrees below, and there were kids out wandering because they didn't know, their parents had forgotten that the branch libraries were closed during that time. What would it take to be open on a couple of those days that are their school, but they're city holidays?
Well,
it was a huge safety concern. I mean, I watched the kids.
It is a safety concern, and we work really hard to try to get the information out to the parents. The school is sending announcements to them well in advance. I do think it is more of a parenting issue than a library issue to solve. My staff is unionized, so I have to figure out how to get those 63 staff working the hours that I have. And so it does become difficult, and I don't want that to seem like it's a trite excuse. But I also do operate with many, many school districts. So because I was counting up how many schools between Sioux Falls, Brandon, Baltic, Garrettson, Tri-Valley, West Central, and we all have different holidays. And so I can't keep my branches open all the holidays that everybody else has too. And then what happens if I do shift the staff there, that means I'm shorted on other days because I don't have additional staffing to cover that.
I know.
So
but
I understand
we short the schools then is what ends up happening, because when you talk to the staff at the other elementaries that are used to it, even their staff forgets, let alone whether it's a parenting issue or not. And I am very pro what you're doing, and I appreciate what it is. It's a safety concern. It truly is that these kids are out wandering back and forth, as well as then the school itself and the community centers are overcrowded then as well. Right. And so, I mean, it's also a concern with the Parks Department being shut down and not having access to the facilities as well. So they've crammed those kids even tighter into the grade schools, and it makes it really uncomfortable. At the beginning of the year, I'm not going to get that changed, but this is one that got at least one more cycle to try to figure out how we can fix it.
Well, one of my strengths, if you ever done Strengths Finder, is strategic. And so that means this problem is not done. This is not a no-no, but it's like I have to figure out how to get it to work with the rest of the operation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank
Thank you.
Councilman Selberg.
Jody, I think you and your team do a great job. I love everybody's enthusiasm and how you guys come up with always creative and fun programs for the kids and really make it fun to go to the library and learn and viable alternative for things to do. One statistic I think you brought up earlier that I'm curious about, so 68% of the kids come to school kindergarten ready. Was that what was on the?
Right.
And what are the requirements? I mean, what makes them, what's the level that makes them either there or not there?
Well, the school does testing of all of the kids coming in, and last year was the first year that they tested all of their kindergartners on a wide variety of skills. And I haven't seen their actual test, but one area in it is are they ready to read? And I know some of the aspects that we're working on with that, with early literacy, is do they understand the flow of a book? You know, do they understand how a story goes? What type of language have they been exposed to? Do they understand basic words? A stat that you guys probably have all been familiar with because it's been floating out there for a while is how many words that the average child of a family in poverty hears in a day, in a year, and how many with their parents with a high school. You know, so as we're more educated, just the number of words that we expose children to changes dramatically from like, and I don't have the numbers, but it is like, not like just this much, it's like this. And that all makes a difference in being ready to learn, ready to understand language.
Right, that's a scary number, but thank you for that. Thanks for what you do.
Anyone else? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion on the county side to approve the Siouxland Library's budget.
Motion to approve the budget.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
I'd ask for a motion to approve on the city side.
So moved, Nitzert.
Second, Kylie.
As for roll call.
Councilmember Sale?
Yes.
Starr? Yes. Staley? Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes, and that passes.
All right. So that item is passed. That takes us to agenda item 4, which is a joint budget hearing for Metro Communications. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon. Raise these up just a little bit. Good evening, commissioners, councilors, chairpersons. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to present information to you from a budget standpoint as well as an operational standpoint for Metro Communications. I'm Scott McMahon, a recently appointed director of Metro Communications. I started my employment on June 3rd of this year, and it's been a very exciting time the last few months, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing to serve not only Metro Communications, but the population of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County. I'd like to start tonight by thanking the Metro leadership team, Deputy Director Jessica Mundahl, Business Manager Anna Raker, and Quality Assurance Coordinator Justin Faber. All put a huge amount of work into creating the document that you're about to view tonight, along with City Finance, so that they could present this information back at the May 1st Metro Management Council meeting. And when I came on board in June 3rd, I reviewed this document, and I've reviewed it several times since then, and it's been a great asset to me as the director to have this information compiled ahead of my time of serving here. So thank you to the leadership team, and like I said, City Finance for helping us with our future projections. I'd like to start tonight by talking a little bit about 911 in South Dakota. There is a South Dakota 911 Coordination Board. It's an 11-member committee appointed by the governor, and they have the awesome responsibility of guiding 911 in the state of South Dakota. They have several roles that they play. One is setting some administrative rules, which all PSAPs, or public safety answering points across the state, need to be in compliance with. They also follow up on surcharge revenues. They conduct audits, and they also lead us in technology to where the future of 911 should be in this state. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about that before jumping into the financial piece, which is surcharge revenues in the state of South Dakota. On an annual basis, our $1.25 that each of us pay as a tax on our telephone lines creates about $11.9 million in revenue. Of that $11.9 million, $8.3 million, or 70% of the 11.9, comes back to the county that it was collected in. Also out of that 11.9 million, 3.9 million stays with the coordination board for projects such as the telephone system that we're currently working on, the next gen telephone system in the state. And then another 933,000 comes back to 11 main incentive PSAPs. Minnehaha County or Metro Communications is one of those PSAPs. You have to serve a population of 30,000 or more people or 3 or more counties. So we fit that description with Metro Communications. Total cost for operating the PSAPs across the state, which there's 32 of them, is $25.8 million a year is what it costs to run the PSAPs. Now, we're not just talking about 911. We're a twofold business. On one side of the business, we have 911. On the other side of the business, we have dispatch services to public safety entities, which would be law enforcement, fire services, and EMS services. So of that $25.8 million that it costs to run the 32 PSAPs across the state, the 911 surcharges cover about 36% of those costs. So you'd take the $8.3 million, which comes back to the counties, plus the $933,000, that would equal 36% of that $25.8 million. Of the 32 PSAPs, we have 17 that are county operated. We have 10 that are city operated. We have 1 that's independent, and that happens to be Metro Communications. And then we have 4 that are on the tribal reservations. Across the state, there's 338 full-time and part-time operators. And last year, they answered more than 328,000 calls for service and another 1.5 million total calls for service. So that's 911 plus administrative calls. Currently, we're in a very exciting time in this state with 911. We are embarking on a new chapter of next generation 911. We hired a new vendor, the state hired a new vendor to provide telephone hardware, software, so that we can move into the future with next gen 911. That's a very important piece which we can talk about at more depth, but for tonight, to keep myself from becoming long-winded, I'll leave it at that. I almost feel like I should set the timer so that I can be respectful of your time tonight. It's exciting for me to talk about 911 and emergency communications, and I tend to get carried away. So, but like I say, I'll try and be very respectful of your time tonight. Metro Communications, a little bit about us here at Minnehaha County, Sioux Falls. We are an independent organization as of 2008. Prior to that, we were an entity of the Minnehaha County government. We have now 49 full-time employees who are at the front of every emergency incident. Quite frankly, the police, law enforcement in general, fire, and EMS really couldn't do their jobs without Metro Communications being at the front of every emergency. And it's important that we keep in mind that the folks that are at the front of every emergency not only just answer that call, but they maintain life. They help people through emergency situations until one of these other entities can arrive on scene to take over. So it's critical, the services that we provide. I should also mention that as an independent organization, we do have a government body. We are governed by the mayor, 2 councilors from the city, and 2 commissioners from the county. We are an accredited Center for Excellence by national standards. We provide service to up to 22 public service agencies in the Minnehaha County area. Those would be fire departments, police departments, sheriff's office, and EMS services. We have a 2019 budget of $4,549,819. You'll see that the state 911 surcharges that we receive are an amount of $2,583,171. The city has a contribution of just over $1 million. The Minnehaha County government has a contribution of about $359,000. And then we have other sources of revenue to include the Brandon Police Department and other sources that end up being about $150,000 in revenue. And this is a part that I'm excited about, is as a component of public safety, PSAPs in general, or in this case, Metro Communications, are unique in that 56% of Metro Communications' budget is funded by 911 surcharges. And overall equipment and related technology costs are relatively low in comparison to other departments. In other words, we don't have to buy new expensive equipment every couple of years. When we buy an expensive piece of equipment, it'll last 10 years, maybe 15 years. And the other thing is wouldn't it be nice if all the city and county departments were 56% funded by an external agency or an external source? That would give us so much money that we could use in our community, City of Sioux Falls, county government. So that's what I like about being involved in communication centers, is that we have a good funding mechanism from an external source, which is all of us in the room as taxpayers, is $1.25 on our cell phone lines. Okay, 10-year growth summary. As the city grows, as the county grows, the population in the city and county grow, we also need to experience growth in each of our organizations. So on the screen, what you're seeing is the public safety entities that serve the population here in Sioux Falls. Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office has increased in employees. Sioux Falls PD has. Metro Communications has by 2 employees over the last 10 years. And then, of course, Sioux Falls Fire Rescue has also increased their employees. So it's just to point out that as population increases, as our workload increases, so will our need for employees. The 10-year growth summary, as far as looking at our population, you can see that in 2008, we had roughly 185,000 people in this Sioux Falls area. In 2018, we had 225,000, so there's been a plus 21% increase. Calls for service has gone up along with that population rate. We've gone from 191,000 calls to 245,000 calls, going from 2008 to 2018. The FTEs, or full-time employees at Metro, as you can see, it's now at 49, but at the time of this chart, 46 to 48, 2 employees. I would like to point out that under total revenues and total city-county support in the year 2018, that actually should represent 2019. So the $4,171,446 that you're seeing is actually a 2019 budget. Same with the total city-county support, the $1,438,584. That's 2019 support rather than 2018. And I apologize for that discrepancy in the report. Operating expenses. Most of our operating expenses were based on a cost of living increase. Most of our expenses are employee related. Like I said earlier, we don't have the large pieces of machinery to buy that cost $1 million. We just don't have those. So our expenses are employees and generally software and equipment maintenance. Those are our main costs. And that's what the next line says, is this just helps us to sustain those equipment costs, those technology software type costs. We may see some relief in 2020, or at least that's our hope at this point, and that is on the 911 trunk lines. Right now, all the telephone calls for 911 come on an analog telephone system. We're hoping that once the new next-gen system is activated, hopefully by the end of this year, we will see those costs be drastically diminished, if not completely go away. So that'll save us about $110,000, maybe a little bit stronger than that. We pay over $10,000 a month in analog trunk line expenses. So we're looking forward to that happening soon. Our personnel expenses, like I said, that is our largest expense. We have a 1% cost of living adjustment that was negotiated by contract. We are asking for 4 new full-time employees in 2020, and I'll justify that here in a minute as we get a little bit further into the PowerPoint. Overtime, that includes not only just overtime for shift coverage or vacancies, it also includes our holiday time. So when there's a federal holiday, that would fall under our overtime as well. And our overtime has stayed consistent. We haven't seen a drastic increase, even though we have had some retention issues in the last few years. Our overtime has stayed pretty much the same, so that's a benefit. Health insurance, we are planning for a factor of a 10% increase, hopefully not more than that. And then we are trying to be as efficient as possible. We're trying to work with the least amount of employees. We're trying to use temporary staff that don't have all the benefits that maybe a full-time employee would have, such as insurance and retirement and some of those other types of benefits that a full-time employee would generally get. So we are trying to be very efficient in our operations. This is a video for sake of time where we're not going to show it just because I want to be conservative of your time as well. But I would like to say that in this 5-minute video, what you would see is a communication officer and an example of a communication operator basically multitasking. We do so many different things as a communication operator individually by ourselves as we handle a call. And I know that Councilor Neitzert had sat in dispatch last year, I believe it was, and he had the opportunity to see that. But what you'll see is a communication operator might be on the radio talking to a fire person or a police person or an EMS person. At the same time, they're on the telephone answering a call for service. At the same time, they're entering information into our computer-aided software, dispatch software. At the same time, they might be doing some other function. So these people are really multitasking throughout the day. And it's generally not just a short burst of action. It's from the time they get there till the time that they go home that they're kept busy multitasking. So it really is a strain on operators to be able to do that day in and day out. So we wanted to kind of justify what's happening in our current operations. So what's happening now is a 911 call comes in, and it could be answered by somebody that's maybe responsible for just call taking, or it could be somebody that's responsible for answering sheriff's calls, or maybe somebody that's responsible for answering fire calls, or maybe somebody that's responsible for police calls. That call could go to any of those people, and it might be completely handled by that person up to the point of dispatch, which they would have another officer do. Next slide, please. This slide, what should be happening, we're hoping that with the addition of 4 full-time employees, one, we'll be able to provide some relief for our full-time staff so that they're not constantly busy for their entire shift, but also to be able to manage calls and provide better public service. When I say better public service, what we're trying to do is have a call taker stay online with that call so the caller becomes comfortable speaking with that caller throughout the call for service. That way, through our software, maybe the fire person might be able to dispatch the fire department, or the police person might be able to dispatch the police department, or the EMS would dispatch the EMS side. And we're not mixing this person between multiple job tasks or job functions at the same time. The call taker can stay online with the caller and provide that customer service. So here's an example of what we call the police boards or the councils on our floor. We have 2 people that sit at the police council with East and West councils. At the sheriff's person, we have 1 person there. Fire and EMS, there's generally 2 people there. And then at data, there's another person. So if you look under the police side, you'll see that there's 1,100,000 radio transmissions that the people at the police boards are responsible for on an annual basis. You can see that they take less telephone calls. So they took 6,000 calls because their focus is to be available for police officers who are calling into the Metro Communications to have have some type of question answered or just to log their activities. So that's why you see that they have less time to be on the phone. If you go to the sheriff's side, you can see that there's fewer transmissions by radio, but there's more calls that they answer by telephone. And then on the fire EMS, the same thing. Less radio transmissions, but more calls. And then, of course, on data, they're more available for calls. And that's what we're trying to do with the call taker, is they would actually fit into this equation or this chart as well, so that they may have literally 0 radio transmissions, but a large number of calls to the public or calls from the public. So what's the risk of not providing some relief for a communications operator? The risks are that it creates an inconsistent level of service for the citizens. We want to make sure that customer service always is at the top of our list. We want to make sure that we're not causing burnout. Like I said, we have had some retention issues, and some of that is possibly related to just being too busy, too stressful an environment for some folks to work in. Usually if we lose somebody in the communication field, the communication operator, it's usually within the first 3 years. The turnover is highest within the first 3 years, somewhere around that 40 to 50%. Those that have served longer than 5 years generally stay with the agency. But the interesting fact is less than 2% of the people nationwide actually retire from this profession because it's that exhausting for people to put that amount of time in. And we're talking, 20, 30 years. It's a difficult career. It's not an easy career. And I have great respect for those people that serve as operators on a daily basis. Sorry, Justin. One more thing on that is that it increases our risk of error. When you have people that are not having time to somewhat wind down from a call or having time to step away from a console, they can increase the risk of error. And also by having some additional staff, we'll have some built-in surge capacity. Right now, we don't have that. But if we get a natural event such as a snowstorm or some other type of weather-related event, we will receive a surge of calls. And right now, we do the best we can to answer each and every call. But if we had call takers, they would be able to front load that system, or they'd be at the front of these calls and say, yes, we're aware that there was an airplane crash, and yes, we have units responding, so that it doesn't tie up your folks that are on the police side or the sheriff's side or the police EMS side. So that's the definition of surge capacity. So how do we know that this will work to have more call takers at the front side of our business and not combine them with the duties of all the other operators? It's because we've tried it before and it's worked. And that's what this chart represents, is we added a full-time person to be a dedicated call taker. I believe this was in 2017. And you can see in 2016 at the Sheriff's Board, we had 31,000 calls. These would be telephone calls. On Fire EMS Board, we had 25,500. Well, once we implemented the call taker position, that dropped calls at both of those councils. So it went from 31,000 to 26,000 to 26,918 for the sheriff's side. So you can see that it did have an effect. It did accomplish what we're trying to do with the call taker positions. And that's why we need the 4 positions that we're requesting. So this is a heat map of where our calls for service are landing on a daily basis by time. And you can see that with the yellow arrow up there, we're sitting at about 4 o'clock, but really any time between 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 o'clock in the evening, those are our busiest times at Metro Communications. And that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and even on the weekends, it's a little bit heavy during those time frames. But you can see where it is that we've identified as being our peak call time. So right now we're on a minimum staffing. We have a minimum staffing level, and you can see that that is like 8 on the morning shift, eight personnel on the morning shift, 9 towards that afternoon from 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night, and then we drop back down to 7 for the night shift. So we're on an 8, 9, 7 on the top chart for minimum. What we're trying to do is bring in these 4 extra positions so that our minimums will become 9, 10, 7. So to give us extra people during the daytime hours when our peak call times are occurring. But yet we're still going to be very efficient on nights. We're still going to run those night shift periods with a pretty lean shift of 7 people. So if you look at this minimum chart here, each hour on this chart represents a 4-hour block. So like under Monday, you have 6 to 10, 10 to 2, 2 to 6. Those are all 4-hour blocks. And if you take all those 4-hour blocks that are outlined in that dashed red line, you would come up with 148 hours. What we did is we divided 148 hours by a 40-hour work week, and that comes out to 3.7 full-time employees, which again justifies or helps to justify our reason for asking for the 4 additional employees. And I should mention this did go through Metro Management Council back on May 1st, and they did recommend as well for the 4 additional employees. So what's our expected results? We expect better service for the caller. We expect that we'll have better caller engagement with the caller. It will allow our dispatchers to solely focus on one call and be more mindful of the emergency responders to make sure that we are documenting each and every radio transmission that they run through Metro Communications. We do believe that we'll have more surge capacity with these call taker positions so that in the event of a tornado or a snowstorm or something like that, we'll be able to handle those calls better. We also believe that it will help with our retention and employee well-being by experiencing less burnout. People have time to get a little bit of a break in between calls. And then it'll also free up our supervisors to do some of the supervisor work that supervisors need to do on a daily basis. So again, 2020, looking at our personnel request, it's a chart similar to what we looked at earlier. We expect our population to continue to grow. We expect our calls for service to continue to grow. With the 4 additional FTEs that we're requesting, that would boost us up to 53 in 2020. And again, I just want to point out that those 2 numbers under 2018 for total revenues and total city-county support are actually 2019 numbers. So again, I apologize for that discrepancy. So historically, we've tried to target for a growth of 3 to 5%. You can see on a 12-year summary, if you look back at 2018, we were funded by the city-county to the amount of $1,441,265. And here today, we're just a little bit below that, $1,438,584. So we really haven't increased in our city-county contribution in the last 12 years, and we're proud of that, proud that we're trying to provide efficient operations, and proud of the fact that we're able to perform that work with the employees that we had and made some adjustments to make that happen. But we do have to be concerned for our cash flow. We have, if you look at our past budgets, each and every year, we do have to dip into our cash flow, our reserves to make budget. So that is a concern of ours. We are proposing for our 2020 budget an increase of 25%. Now that's not our overall budget that's increasing 25%, but it's the city and county contribution that's increasing 25%. So again, it's just that contribution, not the overall budget. So what does that mean for the city? That means that the amount would go to $269,735, and from the county side, it would go to $89,911. The combined city-county support for 2020 would become $1,798,230. Compared to up above, you see the $1,438,000. So there is that increase of that amount. What does this include? It includes 4 full-time employees, and it also allows for some cash flow planning for the next 4 to 5 years out. We feel that this is absolutely necessary to increase our cash flow so that we can continue to balance the budget on an annual basis. And overall budget over the next couple of years, we project it to be less than 5.3%. Again, the goal is to maintain that cash balance so that we can cover our operating and payroll costs. And then, of course, metro operations, like I said, are critical. The law enforcement, fire, and EMS, they really can't serve the public without having somebody at the front of every emergency, and in this case, that's Metro Communications. We do have some future considerations, concerns, if you will. One is our facilities. We have a primary and a backup center that have aged, and we are working to try and improve that situation by trying to find some opportunities for future building and backup center needs. So we will continue to work on that, but I just wanted you to be aware that that is something that's on our horizon as probably more of a capital expenditure down the road. There likely will be future FTE requests as the city grows, the population grows, so will our workload. So we just want you to be aware or mindful that we might ask for that in the future. Trying to still get the supervisors off the floor so that they can do supervisory work, so they can fill out evaluations on employees, so that they can do those tasks, those job tasks that a supervisor needs to do, without being literally at a council trying to do somebody's evaluation. We need to look at the possibility of a third PD council. Sioux Falls PD is a very busy agency. They perform a tremendous amount of work, and we are an equation or a piece of that work that they do, because all the radio transmissions come through us. So we may have to look at a third council in the future. And then also we may have to look at additional fire EMS dispatcher to provide some separation in that on that particular council. So one can be more fire oriented, the other can be more EMS oriented. Okay, so that is hopefully a rather quick presentation of who we are at Metro Communications, what's going on statewide with 911 services, and I appreciate your time tonight. Open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. I think we'll start with the audience. If there's anyone here in the audience that has any questions about this budget presentation, this is your opportunity to come forward. Seeing none, then I'd open it to Commissioner Kiley, or Councilman Kiley.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for a great presentation. You've done a great job in a short period of time. And as I pointed out in an earlier meeting this afternoon, that you're actually still part-time. So
yes, I am, for another week.
Yes, so I greatly appreciate what you have done. Special thanks to Anna and to Jessica and to Justin as well.
Absolutely.
They've been the mainstays throughout this whole effort. And I, as a board member, greatly appreciate the work that you have done, as well as the rest of the staff. I want to kind of hit on your future considerations, the building and the primary and the backup center. And I'm going to come about that in a roundabout way. And in your 10-year growth summary, you had indicated our population served has increased a little over 21.5%. Our calls for service about 28.25%. Yet our authorized FTEs has only increased just over 4%. And you've outlined what's happening now and what should be happening in terms of a dedicated dispatcher versus incoming 911 calls, and you've also outlined the risks associated with individuals that are being overworked and trying to multitask. So I think you've outlined that very well. Even if we wanted to increase FTEs, how much does our current primary center prevent us from doing so? How much could you increase currently if we gave you an unlimited budget for personnel? I'm not saying we're doing that.
I'd appreciate that. But no, I understand. Thank you for the question, Councilor Kiley. I do believe that these 4 additional employees that we're requesting is the maximum for what we really can do at our primary center, and it is way above and beyond what our backup center can handle. We have 6 positions at our backup center. We operate with minimum of 8 staff, so we're already 2 over at the backup center. Really, our backup center is more of an overload center. We really couldn't shut down our main primary center right now and move to the backup center and operate. It's just not large enough. We don't have enough councils. And one problem that we're encountering right now is we're trying to implement this next generation 911 technology into our backup center, and it's not working so well. 1, we're having fiber brought into the building. 2, we're ending up putting some of the equipment that should belong in the backup center itself in an adjacent room and stretching cables through the ceilings and whatnot to try and make this all work. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make it work, but it's been a real challenge with the older facilities to try and implement the new technology. Even just running fiber into our current primary center at the Minnehaha County Public Safety Building, we had fiber run into there last week, and it was a challenge to get some of those things done in an older facility. But yeah, the real question is, do we have room for additional staff? Yes, for the 4 we have, but after that, and keep in mind, we're 24/7. We're there all the time. So that doesn't mean that 4 people are going to be on the same shift at the same time. That really means 1 extra person is what we have room for. And beyond that, we would be very, very limited in capacity.
And I'm glad that you pointed out that last part, one person per shift, basically what it amounts to. And thank you for answering the question, even though I knew the answer. I'm asking it more for the benefit of my fellow counselors and commissioners here. This is really a critical piece of Metro Communications, our primary center that we're operating out right now, as well as the backup center too. And it's something that we've identified a long time ago, but I used the phrase kicking the can down the road in our last Metro Communications board meeting, and we really have, and we have to, at some point in time, we are going to have to budget for a new primary center, or at least moving into a different primary center where it does allow for the growth. 4% growth in personnel when we've had the call volume increase by 28%. How have we done that? With good personnel and with supervisors that are actually working the boards instead of doing their supervisory jobs.
That's true.
So it's very critical that we do that, and it's very possible that this will be coming forward at our last board member, and board meeting. I failed to mention during my 4 o'clock presentation that we have committed to looking into this more seriously, and actually, because we meet quarterly, and so we've agreed to meet again prior to our next quarterly scheduled meeting so that we can really get off the ground. And going to the backup center, if something happened, if we had a natural disaster that shut down our primary center, our backup center is ill-equipped to meet what we're doing right now. And we're maxed out right now. And so we hate to be in that kind of position, but that is the position, that's our reality. That's the position that we're in. So thank you very much for your presentation. I do know that we still meet the challenge of increasing needs and a surcharge that's not increasing at the same rate of those needs. So we can try to address that, but you've presented a very, it's just a basic budget, really. And I know that there's a 25% increase to the city and a 25% increase to the county, but it's absolutely necessary because as Scott mentioned, these individuals are at the forefront of our public safety. It has to go through them before there's any response beyond that. Thank you very much for your efforts.
And if I could just point out, Councilor Kiley, as I mentioned, 56% of our budget comes from an external revenue source, but really our workload for 911, incoming 911 calls is about 29% of our workload, but now we have to do some outgoing calls with that, so it probably comes out around 35 to 40% of our workload is 911. The rest is providing dispatch services to police, fire, and EMS, so thank you.
Madam Chair?
I know we have a couple of people. Commissioner Barth?
Thank you. I got to commend Councilman Kiley. We have a small metro board. Christine here, Gerald Benega, myself, the mayor, and Rick. And this is probably the most important joint operation we have between city and county. And really, I don't feel like we even have enough time tonight to talk about all of the issues that are involved in this. But as we look ahead, we're going to be spending millions of dollars to build a new primary or backup facility. And it has to be done. We cannot shirk that burden. And I have to say, we've just gone through a transition here. Our management staff did a great job. Our line people are answering calls even as we're sitting here comfortable and everything. They've been answering calls since all day long and all night long, and they're going to keep going at it. But I think that, Christine mentioned to me a minute ago about the cost of turnover. And, it takes a couple of years to get a person trained. And if they quit the next day, we just went 2 years without someone on the line. And honestly, we're happy to have you here, Scott. I know you've already helped me out with some issues in the rural firefighters. Your leadership is already appreciated. Not that everybody's happy, that's just the way it is, but I know that those of us on the Metro board have been getting this quite a bit, and I'm not sure the rest of us have been. It's going to be tough.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Councilwoman Staley?
Scott, I just had a question about insurance. Because I remember the museum insurance was going up 15% and yours is 10. So are you guys using different carriers or providers?
We are very hopeful that it will be at that 10%. I personally have not seen the renewal rate yet, and I don't know that our business manager has seen the renewal rate, but when we put this presentation together and we're planning for next year's budget, we just went with the 10%, hoping that will cover costs.
Are you using the same provider as the library employees are?
I'm not sure who the library's provider is.
Or, excuse me, museum board. So like all these different entities have their own different insurance carriers? I'm just curious.
I apologize, I'm too new to answer that question, but I assume so, that everybody might be using.
So whatever their rate, so you're just using different rates of prediction?
Sure.
Councilman Neinzert?
Excuse me, I'm sure that my county predecessors can help me, but I want to say that county employees, it's a self-insured program, I think. So I think it really depends on the claims that you have year to year. And then you would be presumably an independent entity and you're not under their plan, I'm thinking?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. So, and yours is taking a stab at hoping it's 10%, but, and I know the county's claims, you know, they've had, it's very variable. This was not a great year, apparently. When you described to me, and I heard Councilor Kiley explain what I hear, and I was aware of this, but I don't like single points of failure, and I don't like risk. And when I hear that your backup center maybe could barely function if there was an issue, think about what a catastrophe that could be for the community if there really was some sort of an issue where you could only run out of the backup center and there was some sort of an issue. And I've obviously been in the primary center, and I'm a little interested in how you're going to get 4 new people plus consoles in the facility that you have. So have you, in not being part of this board, have you had discussions about if we were to build the public safety center, about that possibly being a location? There's also other potential locations. There could be a lot of synergy there.
Yeah, great questions, Councilor Neinzert. Right now, we're in the exploratory process, and when I came on board in June 3rd, first thing I did was I reviewed copious amounts of information dating back 5, 6, maybe a little bit longer than that, years old. So I reviewed all that information, and I put value in that information because somebody did some legwork above me or before me to make sure that they tried to research some of the best options. Now what we're doing right now is we're going back through those options, and we're looking to see if there's still a valid option and looking to see if there's maybe some new options out there. Maybe a new option might be, is it more beneficial for the council, for the city and the county to look at leasing space rather than paying money up front for a new facility? Maybe we could lease a space cheaper. An example of that is what's happening right now in Bismarck, North Dakota. They're kind of in the same situation we are, and they're working with a company up there that has a hardened structure because we are a public safety entity. We have to be in what's called an ISC rating of 500, which means that we have to build to a construction standard of that FEMA rating, which takes your construction from the normal $125 a square foot up to about $500 a square foot. So the costs become very expensive in a hurry. So, you know, it might be an option that if we have a option to lease some property that fits that description as being a hardened target, maybe that's something we want to look at. Maybe that's an easier way to come up with some city-county funding versus putting up a new $10 million structure. I don't know, it's too early to tell, but right at the moment we're researching that information so that we can bring it to Metro Management Council and present it and hear the feedback.
Okay, very good. And speaking of leasing, we're looking at possibly leasing a space for a West Side police
Yes.
whatever one wishes to call it. And I don't know whether the building would work out, but you could always, maybe there'd be some synergy there.
I'd hope so, but unfortunately, it will not meet that hardened structure. A hardened
won't,
structure
okay.
that we need can't have any windows, essentially. It's going to be basically a concrete building, bunker style, if you will, that would be very hardened. It has to be able to withstand an F5 tornado. It has to be built to that FEMA standard, so.
If you were to move the primary center somewhere else, could the current primary become the backup? Would that be?
That's,
that could be
the leadership staff and I have discussed that. We feel that that would be a very, very good option. If we were to lease space somewhere else, is to use our current space as a backup center. It's all together. It could be left in the position that it is, in the condition that it is, and be used as a backup center. Or I know from the county side, there's been some building discussion meetings that perhaps we do want to remodel our current facility, and perhaps we do want to look for another location for our backup center. So like I said, right now, there's a lot of options on the table. We have, which is great. It's great to explore the options. It's great to see what's most advantageous for you folks on the budget side to decide where should Metro Communications be for its primary center and where should its backup center be. But at this point, we're just very happy that there's lively conversation about where we should be in the future.
And last question, would this 4 FTEs essentially remove anyone from doing the dual role, or would there still be some doing a dual role?
There will still be a dual role. What this will do is it'll help move us towards operational type that's typical of a bigger, larger public safety answering point. In larger centers, you become more single tasked versus multitasked, and that's what we're trying to do here, is become more single tasked so that we can offer the best service to the public.
And I do
and responders.
And I do remember that was the amazing things, was the dual role individuals that they were having to, I mean, you had to do this switch. You know, you had the call, you're dealing with the person on the line, and then you switch over here, and then you're doing a dispatch thing, and you're talking to, you know, paramedics, logistics, and then you're flipping back over here. And I'm assuming in the new one, they would take the call, they would code it, and then it would automatically, through the CAD, if they coded it as a police call or whatever, goes onto the police screen.
And we are trying to do that type of an operation now, but it's just that because at times we just become too inundated with calls that we have to change that up, and everybody just becomes a call taker, dispatcher, the whole function. And that's typical of smaller PSAPs. In a smaller PSAP, where there's only maybe 2 or 3 communication operators working, they will typically take a call at the beginning and manage that call all the way to the end, which means collecting data, entering data, toning out fire departments, toning out police departments, staying online with the caller, providing emergency medical dispatch, providing emergency fire dispatch, all those things single-handedly. And we all know that when you're tasked with that many tasks, the potential for error can certainly occur.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Starr.
I'll be fast. I always promise that and never do. I guess this is more, at least for the board members and stuff, it just seems obvious to me that we're in the middle of a large building cycle on the city side of whether it's a fire training facility, we're in the process of building a new fire station that we're bonding for, and waiting 4 or 5 years down the road doesn't make sense. This needs to probably be wrapped into this as well. We keep talking about partnerships and wanting to take care of things, and we'd miss a huge opportunity not including this backup center, whether it's the new fire station itself, which would definitely be far enough away. And I don't know if the new training facility would be far enough away in the event of a natural disaster, but boy, we should be doing this at the same time. I mean, the longer we wait, I think Councilor Neitzer did a nice job of pointing out that we're pushing the line here with what we're trying to do, and we're being lucky holding it together. This needs to be wrapped up in that bonding at the same time to build the facility that we need, rather than waiting even the 4 to 5 years and down the road of building that backup center. So.
Thank you, Councilor Starr, for pointing out those 2 additional locations. Those 2, along with the other ones that we mentioned, are all on the table for discussion. And yeah, we're just excited about it.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion on the county side.
Make a motion to approve the joint budget for Metro Communications.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Heiberger.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously.
Can I get a motion on the city side?
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Kylie.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Sale?
Yes.
Starr? Staley?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes. That passes.
Motion passes. Okay, that takes us to public input.
Thank you.
Yeah, takes us to public input. If there's anyone here tonight who'd like to speak about something that was not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. I think we outlasted any public input tonight. Okay, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn on the county side.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Motion to adjourn on the city side?
Move to adjourn, Star.
Second?
Second, Nitzert.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.